Welcome to Sib Spot. Today's Reddit stories are from PettyRevenge. Story 1 is by Sweet B1. Ding dong. My father was the master at PettyRevenge. He always claimed he'd be waiting in the gap for the right moment. Then he'd seize it. Sometimes it would take years, but he'd get you. Back in the 80s, he would go for a coffee in the local shop down in Pass Christian, Mississippi, full of retirees talking about various things over a cup of joe. This guy Tony was a cantankerous old braggart and always had to one-up everyone. Dad got tired of it, was walking away one day and passed the library. They had tables out front and were selling off old books for a dime each. This was a deal he couldn't pass up as he had a plan. At night, as he listened to his TV shows, he inscribed each book with the following. Quote, "If found, $5 reward if returned to Tony Berard at 307 Girard Street," etc. Quote. The next step was slow distribution. Every time he left the house, he'd grab a few books, pass a bench, drop one off, waiting room, drop one off. This went on for months. Meanwhile, Tony was getting knocks on his door at various hours and standing there, books in hand. College kids, homeless people, couples with kids, all doing their good deed, returning his book for the reward. Furious, he'd grab the book, but then they'd tell him how far they'd come to see that he'd gotten his book back, and he promised a reward. Let's just say, every time he answered the door, it cost him $5, and this went on and on. He was still a jerk and made my dad annoyed, but my dad could just chuckle knowing how angry it was making him, and he never found out who did it. Ding dong. Hi, $5 please. Oh, I can't imagine. This is just one more good reason not to carry any cash on you if you can avoid it. Our next story is by Persephone on Earth. Try to, quote, steal my car? Enjoy losing your partnership. This is something that happened a long time ago, but it still tickles me. Sorry, it's a long one. We don't mind. I was young and had my little hand-me-down Acura Integra since I was 16. My parents let me borrow it, and I paid for everything, repairs, insurance, gas, etc. When I graduated high school, it was my graduation present. I'd actually paid about $1,000 to them to cover insurance for a long-term time, not long before they dropped having me pay for insurance because neither my sister or stepsister were paying for theirs. My stepdad was a mechanic and specialized in cars made for racing and car shows. He and his boss had had their vehicles featured in car magazines that were sold internationally. He took care of the repairs for it and I paid for parts. When I got to be around 23 or 24, I had moved pretty far away, so obviously my stepdad wasn't taking care of the repairs anymore, but I did know some basic things. I was driving down the road when suddenly smoke and steam came pouring out from under the hood. I panicked but pulled over as safely as I could and quickly contacted AAA. They sent someone to come tow the car to their garage to get it repaired. I get to the garage after I finally get a ride since they wouldn't let me ride in their truck. They tell me the mechanic is looking at it now. I wait a bit and this guy comes out. He looks concerned and then lays it on me. "Well, your whole radiator blew. It will cost about $2,000 or so to have it replaced." I began to panic because that was worth more than the car was. Then with a slight smirk he says, "I'll tell you what. I will pay you $2,000 and just take it off your hands for you, since its repairs are worth more than the car itself." Alarm bells went off immediately. This guy was obviously trying to scam me and take my car. Now I'm pissed. I don't let it show though and say I have to make some phone calls. I step outside and walk around and peek into the garage bay. The guy steps back into the garage and goes to his bench and starts chatting with the other mechanic. He's grinning up a storm, and plastered all over his workbench are photos of modified cars. One of the photos happens to be my stepdad's boss's cars, which is a bright yellow Acura Integra and hard to miss. This was the one at the front, and it all clicked into place. I called my stepdad and asked him about how likely it was that the radiator had completely blown. He said it was highly unlikely but not impossible. I explained everything to him and he told me, "Do not sell that car. He's trying to get it because he wants to kid it out. Ask if he can show you exactly in the engine where the problems were. If he shows you, he might be legit, but take photos and send them to me so I can be sure. If he refuses or attempts to distract and dissuade you, he's lying, and get it towed to another shop right away. Do not let them do anything until after I verify. I hung up and put back on my distraught face, making my way back into the office. I asked the manager if the mechanic could show me exactly where the problem was. The manager went and got the mechanic, and wouldn't you know it, he absolutely refused to show me, saying how I wouldn't know what I was looking at. There was no point because it was completely busted, and any other excuse he could. Please do not make any repairs. I'm going to have it towed to another shop. They got angry and tried to dissuade me again, but I wouldn't budge. I called AAA to see if they would cover having it towed to a different location. They said no, that it had already been taken to a AAA garage, so any other towing would be on me. I arranged my own tow and had them tow it to a shop right next to where I was living that had the best reviews in town. The reviews all made a point of saying that they never tried to get people to do unnecessary repairs and often did their best to save people money. One even said they had taken it to a different place, and they tried to get him to do a bunch of stuff before being brought here, and told most of it was completely unnecessary. After I had it towed there, I got a call from AAA again. They wanted to know why I was having it towed to a different shop, as it seemed very odd and they were following up on that request. I told them everything. The lady was silent for most of my story. She asked me, "Do they have AAA logos on their vehicles?" I confirmed that they didn't just have one, but no less than 6 AAA logos on each tow vehicle that they had, and was prominently displayed on their website, and picture of the trucks were there too. She stayed silent for a while and then said she would call me back before hanging up. The other shop looked over my car and everyone was super kind and friendly. The mechanic came and got me from the waiting room and took me back to the shop. He pointed into the engine. "See that hose there? It's the factory hose. It's over 20 years old. It ruptured because it's too old." I'm surprised it lasted that long. I asked about the whole radiator being blown and he looked at me like I had grown several heads. "What? No, of course not. I even tested it and it was fine and even well beyond its labeled rating. Whoever told you that was lying their butt off." We went back into the office and I explained everything to them and they looked at me horrified. Again the mechanic interjected, "What an a-hole! How dare he lie and try to steal your car like that? What's the shop's name so I can make sure no one ever goes there? Trying to say it will cost $2,000 to repair when it just needs a $20 hose replaced." They fixed up my car, and after I got it home, I got a call. It was AAA again, and the lady asked if I had any updates. Boy, did I fill her in. I didn't leave anything out. Everything the mechanic had said, the discrepancy in the repair cost, the actual repair required. She was silent, but I could hear her fingers madly typing away. Once I was done, she said, "I'm so sorry for what happened. We take these things very seriously. Don't worry, they won't get away with this." A week later, I checked on that shop. All the AAA logos were gone, and they were no longer listed as being a AAA approved business. This sort of thing does not happen often enough. There's so many mechanics out there that just assume the woman doesn't know what she's talking about and she can easily be taken advantage of. And honestly, in a lot of cases, that's true. And honestly, it's not just women. There's a lot of men that don't know cars at all and they just say, "Well, you need this done." And person sighs and says, "Well, I guess I have to have it done. I guess I gotta do it." But I've never encountered a story where somebody actually tries to buy your car off you. Your car must have been a make and model that was a bit more special for your stepdad to know so much about it since he works on racing vehicles. And I'm assuming these guys wanted your car because of the ability to turn it into some sort of race vehicle. It's just unfortunate that some people in the world are so scummy. Our next story is by PJ Murphy. Grocery Store Karen. This is a really short one, but it's a good one. This was years ago when I had a .22 caliber brain and a .50 caliber mouth. I was at a grocery store with 2 items. I went to the customer service desk, which had a sign that said 5 items or less. Just as I was approaching the counter, a Karen ducked in front of me with a basket that had 12 to 15 items, and she started unloading it on the counter. I looked at the cashier, pointed at the sign, held up my hand with my fingers spread out, and gestured as a question. She looked at me and shrugged as if she couldn't do anything about it. So I said to Karen, "You must be a natural blonde." She replied, "I am. How did you know?" I pointed at the sign. "Because you can't count to 5. Oh, was she mad. She paid and got out of there in a blur. Afterward, the cashier was grinning. I said, "You probably aren't allowed to say anything, but I can." I honestly wish that cashiers would say, "Sorry, that's more than 5. This is for 5 items only. You're going to have to pack up your stuff and get in line." They may get mad and leave a nasty review, but the store manager could honestly reply to that and say, "You brought 15 items to the 5 line," and so many people would be like, "Yeah, don't do that. That's just rude." Though this story was short, it got a couple good replies, and a reply story as well. Down in the comments by Beautiful Phantom 1. Got her hopes all up waiting for a compliment, and then trashed her like last night's garbage. Creative insult that was 100% warranted. And then that same poster shared a story down below. Lol, my son did something similar to a lady at the grocery store. I didn't allow my kids to misbehave at the grocery store or at restaurants. So I'm grocery shopping with my youngest. We are in line to pay, and the child in front of us is just throwing a massive tantrum. Screaming, crying, hitting his mom, grabbing stuff off the display and throwing it on the floor. My son, I want to say he was about 4 at the time, is standing beside me, calmly watching this. He turns to me, and quite loudly, I think he felt he had to be loud to be heard over this other child, "Mom, aren't you glad I don't act like that?" The mother of the tantrum child hears it and whips around to glare at me like I had put him up to it. I just told her calmly that he came up with that all on his own. The poor cashier was turning purple trying not to laugh. Tantrum mom finishes up, pays, and stomps out of the store. The cashier gave my son a sucker, and I bought him a candy bar. Part of me is glad to see this happen. Like, if I were in the store, I would want that sort of thing to happen. I don't know. I have mixed feelings because you don't know, there may be some issue with the kid that caused this tantrum to begin with. Some kids just behave badly. Some have a reason that they behave badly. You never know. Our stories for today have come to a close. Until we meet again, have a Karen-free day.